A Snicker of Magic, Chapter 27. I don't know what you've got planned this early, Felicity Pickle. Aunt Cleo drew on her cigarette. She wheezed a puff of smoke. But I've been awake nearly 24 hours, so this better be worth it. Else I'll be in a bad mood all day long. The sky was still dark when my family piled in the pickled jalapeno again. Cleo still had curlers dangling from her hair. Mama sat in the front seat. She didn't put up much fuss over Cleo driving. Mama had been so quiet all morning. I knew she was probably just tired from working on the gallery all night. But she seemed almost peaceful, too. Or maybe I just wanted her to seem peaceful. We still hadn't had a chance to talk about the threadbare curse, or the dancing shadows. The plastic grocery bags full of our worldly possessions were still packed up all bulgy and full, propped beside Aunt Cleo's door. But we'd already done our packing before the duel, so maybe Mama just hadn't had time to unpack. That's what I hoped. I wish I could see some words close to Mama, and maybe I could get a hint of what she was thinking about. But I couldn't see a thing. Franny Jo called dibs on the second seat so she could keep on sleeping. Biscuit had the same thing in mind, apparently. Boone and I sat in the way back with his banjo. Boone yawned and put his arm around the back of the seat. He said, "Care to divulge what this little road trip is all about?" "Not yet." I shook my head. "You'll see when we get there. And when I tell you, you play Fair and Tender Ladies again. Got it?" "Got it." Boone ruffled his hand through his shaggy blonde hair. "But just so you know, no song I play is going to sound good this early. Why couldn't we play later, after dark?" "Because I couldn't wait until then," I said. The base of the sky was turning orange and pale pink. I figured that was the sun's way of yawning and stretching before it puts its hands on the hills and pushes on up into the sky. Mama rolled down her window so we could hear the sounds of a mountain morning, wind and bird song and the per-clunk of the pickled jalapeno. "The pickled jalapeno's heart is beating fast this morning," Franny Jo said, yawning. "Felicity must be taking us somewhere good." "I wish Felicity would have waited till sunset," said Boone. "Amen," Cleo coughed. "Not me," Mama sighed. "I'd rather go with the sunrise, and I would have dragged everybody out of bed this early anyway, if Felicity hadn't done it. I can't wait for you to see the gallery." Boone scratched his scruffy jaw. "You figured out what it was missing?" Mama nodded. "I did. I absolutely did. I couldn't see much of her face. It was turned towards the dip-dyed sky, but I could tell by the sound of her voice that she was smiling. Sunrise is a good word to smile over." "I don't like how stories always end with folks riding off into a sunset," Mama said. "I've never cared for that. I'd rather ride all the way to the end and see that there's a sunrise still waiting for me. Morning in my eyes, stars at my back." When Cleo swerved the jalapeno onto Main Street, the wind carried all sorts of smells through the open windows. The smell of autumn and cool wind and rain. The smell of coffee brewing in somebody's kitchen. Bacon frying on somebody's stove. I never thought there'd be so much to see or hear or smell before the sun came up, but I was wrong. I liked watching Midnight Gulch come awake. Songbirds swooped through the trees. Lights flickered on in the little square windows of the houses we passed. Somebody was probably taking a shower, and somebody was slapping snooze on their alarm clock, and somebody was making a to-do list for the day. I had one more thing to do. The curse was broken already, but Florentine's burdens were in my arms now. I wanted to lay them down for good, put them someplace where nobody could pick them back up. I can't see much good in carrying regrets around like keepsakes. That's why I didn't just chuck the jars into Cleo's recycle bin. Florentine laid the burdens down. I planned to turn them loose, for good. I clutched Florentine's bag tight against my side. Mama must have heard the jars clink because she turned around and her forehead wrinkled. "Why'd you bring that?" she asked. "What'd she keep in that satchel anyhow?" "You'll see," I said. Mama shook her blonde hair away from her face. "I don't know if I want to see." Aunt Cleo sneezed. Then she cussed. "Cleo!" Mama yelled. But Cleo hollered, "Felicity!" "Ma'am?" She glared at me in the rearview mirror. The skin around her eyes was extra creased and puffy. "Why you bringing them nasty old jars out to the gallery?" "That's what I just asked," Mama said. "Felicity says we'll see." "Oh, mercy," Cleo sighed. "Please tell me those jars don't have anything to do with us." "I don't think so," I said. "Not really. This is more of a symbolic observance." "A what?" "I think it's probably a Snicker of magic." I knew I shouldn't have got out of bed for this. Cleo cranked the steering wheel and parked us on 2nd Street near the gallery. Midnight Gulch was still quiet when we climbed out of the van. The sun was rising, reflecting off the puddles in the road. The whole world looked golden that morning, as if there was a big light inside of Midnight Gulch that nobody could turn out, not even the night. Good magic, I thought. And as I thought it, 3 words fell down from the sky, parachute-shaped. Magic, believe, threadbare. This is going to be a good day, I whispered. What are the pickets doing here? Mama waved. Jonah and his mom were waiting at Abigail Honeycutt's bench. I don't know what these 2 are up to, Jules said. I'm almost afraid to find out. Not me. Ramblin' Rose came clumping down the sidewalk, her pajamas tucked into her cowboy boots. I trust these 2 with all my heart, I sure do. Felicity, Mama looked down at me with the sort of stare insinuating I might be in trouble. Why did you get Miss Walker out of bed so early? You better have a good reason. I do, I said. I slung Florentine's traveling bag down onto the sidewalk. Trust me. Whoa, Florentine said as she walked up behind us. I thought she might be wondering what in the world I was doing with her magical jars, but Florentine wasn't looking at me. She was looking at the gallery. I hadn't even looked at Mama's painting yet, but what I saw was even more wonderful than I'd imagined it to be. I knew Mama was painting a landscape of Midnight Gulch, the mountains, the river, the tall pine trees that stood all across town, but I didn't know she was painting the people I knew, and the people I'd never seen, filled up all the land space. Look at those faces, Florentine sighed, stepping closer to the wall. She pointed to the painted likeness of Ramblin' Rose, red dress and cowboy boots and silver hair falling in curlicues around her face. Rosie's smile was spot-on perfect. She even painted the roses on Rose's boots. Jonah laughed. And there's Oliver and Elvis and Team Pickett. Cleo snorted. There's Charlie Sue Hancock. Ha! She nudged me with her elbow. Bet that's the only picture Charlie Sue's ever shown up in. And there's you, I said to Florentine. Mama had painted Florentine sitting under a tall apple tree reading a book. She didn't paint your burdens. She knows I put those down for good. Florentine glanced down at her traveling bag. Why are you carrying them around? Before I could explain, Boone rested his hand on my shoulder. Did you see how she painted us, Felicity? He pointed to the corner of the building, and there we were, all of us. Holly Beth, Cleo said as she stomped over towards our likenesses. You gave me a different hairstyle. Had she ever? Mama had given Cleo a cooler hairdo than I'd ever seen my aunt actually wear, but she'd captured everything else perfectly. The blue in Cleo's eyes, the kindness in her face. Cleo had a hedgehog quilt wrapped around her shoulders. Boone was beside Cleo, playing his banjo with his head tilted back. She'd painted him singing. She'd painted him exactly right, all the way down to his cowboy boots. Franny Jo was tight against Mama's leg, her eyes big and blue and full of trust, and a little bit of mischief, too. Facto-fabulous, Franny Jo. Mama painted herself exactly right, too. Slender and small, with messy, paint-streaked hair. She had the beginning of a smile on her face. Mama was good at seeing herself exactly the way she was, no more, no less. And then she painted me. I'm kneeled down on the ground, hugging Biscuit close to me, and Biscuit and me both have smiles on our faces. My red hair is falling all around my shoulders. My freckles are extra sparkly. I figured out what was missing from Midnight Gulch, Mama said softly as she walked up beside me. Us. I looked up into her face, squinting against the morning sun. The light spilled down over her shoulders. She squeezed my hand, and I squeezed her hand back, and I decided to remember that moment, forever and always. Because that's when I realized that it's possible to have a happy ending, even if the ending isn't what you imagined. I still miss Roger Pickle. I was still hurt that he hadn't come back to us, but I didn't feel like my family was in pieces anymore. We might never look like a normal family, but I didn't mind. Normal was never one of my favorite words anyway. I glanced at the painted faces of all the people I'd come to know and wanted to know. Home isn't just a house or a city or a place. Home is what happens when you're brave enough to love people. Hey! Boone shielded his eyes from the light as he looked back towards the painted sky. You painted the threadbare balloon. Spindly detail, Holly. That reminds me, I said as I stepped back from Mama and slung Florentine's bag off my shoulder. I've got an idea, and it's going to sound silly, but you need to trust me. Jonah was by my side in a flash. I trust you. You're the only one, I smiled. I pulled one of Florentine's jars out of the bag and passed it to the beetle. Wait till I tell you before you open it. And then I stood up tall and yelled, Everybody stand over here in a line, facing the gallery. Felicity, Mama sighed, what on earth? Boone, I said, and Miss Walker, you two play that song together. Fair and tender ladies. Boone, you can sing the words too if you want. Rosie Walker nodded to Boone. You start us off, young man. Boone pulled the banjo across his heart. He strummed the tune along for the first few bars, but then Miss Rosie joined in with her guitar. Nothing's happening, Jonah whispered. Give it a second, I said. The wind rolled down Main Street, whipping through my hair. The jar in my hand began to rattle. Now? Jonah asked. Almost, I said. Felicity, Cleo hollered. Do not open that infernal jar. Who knows what diseases and dirt and critters might come spilling out. Boone sang out the first lyric, loud and clear and beautiful. Now try, I said to Jonah. The lids on both our jars twisted as easy as if we'd just put them on. We got them open at the same time and held them out. Sure enough, two tall shadows spilled out onto the pavement. Oh, this can't be good, Cleo said. Everybody else was too dumbstruck to say much of anything. The long and shapeless shadows stretched out farther and farther until they were on the gallery wall. Then the shadows settled into the shapes of two men, both lanky and tall. Hey, yo, said Oliver Weatherly, who'd come to stand behind all of us. If that don't beat all. As we watched the gallery, the two shadows wandered around in the painting as though they were looking for something, or someone. Finally, the shadows spun around and faced each other. They didn't move for a time. And then one shadow opened up his arms, and the other shadow ran into those arms and held on tight. I suppose there's no way of knowing which shadow belonged to which brother. There's no way to tell which shadow reached first. I guess it doesn't matter who reached first, though. What matters is that one of them reached out. What matters is that the other one held on. We watched as the shadows climbed into the painted tree, then jumped up into the hot air balloon my mama had painted. Boone played the music faster. The music sounded happy now, even though the words were still sad. Bittersweet, a ribbon of a word, came drifting off the edge of Rosie's guitar. As Boone and Rosie played, the painted balloon sailed back and forth across the wall. The shadows waved at us. We all waved back. And then the balloon disappeared off the wall completely. We watched its shadow slide across the pavement all the way down Main Street, and then it was gone. We all stared at the sky so long that we startled when Cleo said, Mercy, something else is moving up there. That's Felicity's tattoo, Franny said matter-of-factly. Felicity's what? Mama yelled. Oliver laughed out loud. I'll be, there's a bird roosting on your wall. Hope's coming down, y'all. But Oliver was wrong. Instead of coming down, Hope pulled up in a big Greyhound bus. And when the air brake puffed and the bus pulled out again, a tall man in a camouflage uniform was standing on the pavement, a thick duffel slung across his back. Jonah gasped. Dad? Jill looked at her son first. Then she looked back across the street. Then all three of them were moving towards each other, meeting in the middle. I heard the sound of three hearts colliding. A sob, then a ripple of happy laughter, then a whispered hallelujah. The shadows of all three of them, holding on to each other, stretched out on the sidewalk. If I was a shadow catcher like Isabella Thistle, I'd have stolen those shadows, just so the pickets would always remember that day. Just so we all would. I caught a sudden movement in the corner of my eye and turned in time to see Florentine running towards the bus. Hold on, she yelled. The bus lurched to a stop right at the edge of 2nd Street. Homeward bound, Florentine yelled, waving her hands in the air. You are leaving? I yelled, running up behind her. Florentine motioned to the bus driver to give her a minute. Then she smiled down at me and slung one skinny arm around my shoulders. I got some things to make right myself. She reached for the golden locket around her neck. I smiled at her. You're off to find Waylon? I reckon I am. You don't have to wonder any more either, I told her. Wherever you go, you can settle down if you want. Florentine nodded, like she was considering my words. I'm going to find Waylon. That's the first thing I'll do. But the truth is, I don't feel cursed to wander, Felicity. I feel blessed to wander, as long as I got somebody I love wandering with me. You might feel that someday, maybe, but I don't blame you for wanting to be here either. We all need a place to start out. Might as well start at home, right? She smiled and shook her head as she glanced over at Jonah's family. Tell that honeybee I said goodbye. Florentine boarded the same bus that had just brought Jonah's dad into town. She waved goodbye from the window and I waved back. It's so weird how life is so full of moving around. People coming and going, people passing by each other all day long. You never know which person is going to steal your heart. You never know which place is going to settle your soul. All you can do is look and hope and believe. Oliver Weatherly invited us all to his house for Charlie Sue's chocolate pancakes and a side of blackberry sunrise. Can we go home after that? I asked Mama. And she leaned down and kissed the top of my head and said the most wonderful words. We are home, Felicity. It was the sweetest day.